morning and welcome to the personalization webinar. Today we're going to be talking about how personalization is changing the customer experience. And today I am joined by Kirk Morales. He is the CEO and co-founder of Hyber. And then, of course, Terry O'Shaughnessy. She is the director of client success at Tollway. So better to talk about personalization than you two. And so today we'll just be covering how personalization really is changing the face of marketing and also how the customer experiences your brand. And so throughout the presentation, if you have any questions, please feel free to post them in the chat. But giving them just a kind of a brief overview, but can you guys give a little more of a description of kind of what you do and your background?
Sure. So my background is largely in analytics and technology. And it kind of all came into what is our platform Hyber, which allows brands to develop dynamic, immersive, contextual experiences for their customers, for different audiences of customers, so that as a visitor, when you come to a website, you're seeing an experience that's tailored around who you are as a person, based off of where you came from, what your behavior is, and what types of products you're interested in.
I'm the director of client success at Tollway. Tollway's a design and innovation firm. We work with everybody from entrepreneurs with a concept to large organizations that are just looking to innovate or expand their technology. My role within the organization is I oversee our market intelligence and customer experience. Our role is when we're working with the client to really help them build a process or build a technology, whatever it may be, with the customer always in the center.
So just to kind of dive right into it, can you tell us a little bit about personalization just from a marketing and sales perspective?
Yeah, so the idea of personalization at a high level is the idea of being able to personalize an entire experience for a consumer or a prospect. And so that goes beyond even the idea of recommendation or user experience in general. And so the way we like to describe it is by sort of taking it offline. Right? So imagine that you're a consumer walking into a sporting goods store like an REI. Right? So if it knows that, if REI knows that I'm more of a camper, when I walk into the store, I'm seeing camping equipment. Right? Everyone's dressed like they're campers, and it might sound like a ridiculous example, but the idea is the entire experience of the store is around the fact that I'm a camper. So it's easier for me to find the products I'm interested in. The imagery on the wall is people camping at these exotic spots around the world. And I can still access other products that I'm interested in, right? So I can still go to the back and see kayaking or mountain climbing or biking. But really the experience is around who I am. And then, if I come in as a different person who's more interested in mountain biking, I'm walking into the exact same store, but now all of a sudden this REI is completely changing to make all mountain bikes front and center. And everyone else is dressed and acting like fellow mountain bikers, and the imagery on the sides of the stores and the products that I'm seeing initially are all now tailored to the idea that I'm a mountain biker. And so we're doing the same thing with personalization on a website, in that we're taking your exact same website without needing to create landing pages or different microsites or anything. And to personalize your site means to take your site and allow different audiences to have different personalized experiences throughout your entire site.
That's pretty cool. And then, Terry, from your kind of perspective as far as customer experience goes, can you speak to a little bit more about how personalization fits into that?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I love what you guys do. I think it's awesome. And I think it's important, we say customer experience, and the term CX just doesn't necessarily mean great. It's just what the experience is. So you have an option as a business owner, as a retailer, whatever it may be, to what is the experience that you're going to create for your clients? Is it going to be good or bad? Or is it going to be indifferent? How are people going to talk about you? And, I use the example of Cheers with these two, and I might be a little bit older than everybody else, but
only one of us knew what
the whole the whole idea, like Cheers as the bars, people walked in and they knew what they were going to drink, and everybody knew their name, and they said hi. And so we as humans, that's just something that naturally feels good to us. It's a good experience to have people acknowledge you. It's great when you're doing business with someone or you're a patron to their company, and they ask you, how was your vacation, or whatever it is. So that personalization is just key to making the customer feel good, and for you guys to be able to start that process, before even like the real interaction has started, is really impressive. It's just, it makes people feel good, and
Mhm.
when people feel good, the experience is often something that they would classify as great.
Mhm. Yeah. So, how would you say that that differs from like A/B testing or dynamic landing pages, or even, I mean, on that regard, like even just relevance?
Sure. So when you're looking at A/B testing, it's just another form of optimization. So I don't recommend that personalization ever replace optimization or A/B testing. It's just kind of a later evolution of it. So A/B testing is more of a statistical analysis, generally across your entire site. So hey, I have maybe this messaging or this imagery that I want to test on the homepage or somewhere else, and kind of maybe see how it converts with different audiences. So A/B testing is usually a good first step before personalization to see what types of variations are performing better for different audiences. And then once you know that, you can then convert that into personalization. So those audiences are now always seeing those personalized experiences. With any statistical analysis, A/B testing included, there's always some margin of error, right? Okay, did this person convert because they were going to convert anyway, or did they not convert because they weren't going to buy anyway, right? So it's more statistical and not as personal. Personalization now takes it a step farther and say, okay, we know who you are as a person, and as a result, we're going to change your experience to match that. Personalization, depending on how it's used, it could be a direct replacement for things like dynamic landing pages. It could save some management time in having to manage 10 different pages. Instead, you could just manage your one site and have it dynamically change out.
That's very cool. So where does personalization fit into? And I know you kind of covered this a little bit, but into customer experience as far as the digital versus physical world. You gave a great reference with REI.
Yeah, I just think that so when you're transitioning out of the digital, to be able to capture the information that the digital piece is capturing, be able to translate that into the experience. So, depending on what type of business you are, if somebody is, you were talking about REI and their experience with the retailer, when they go in and start to purchase and browse, that's one piece. But other types of businesses also use that type of digital marketing where they're trying to collect information and understand the people that are visiting. And an example, with Tallwave, we have clients that range from, like I said, people that are coming in with a concept versus large organizations. And if we're able to start capturing early on who they are, what they want, what their needs are, that makes our first, face-to-face meeting with them so much more effective. We're going and we're not spending time sorting through the things that they've already given us or that they've already identified as their wants and needs. So we can go right into starting to even personalize our sales pitch and our offerings. Let's not spend time talking about stuff that they have no interest in. And that right there, just that as soon as that face to face starts, the experience is already starting in a great place.
I think another important thing about that whole idea too is that it's the intention isn't to be salesy, right? It's not necessarily to make it easier for you guys or any online retailer to close more sales. It really is about the user or the client or the customer or whatever you want to call them. And in your case, as you're able to take it offline, like your tall wave and talking to clients and being able to personalize that sales process and that proposal process, it's actually to the client's benefit as well
Absolutely.
because they're only hearing things that they care about and they're hearing it in a way that resonates with them.
And their time is valuable. So
Absolutely.
letting them know and getting right to the point is very helpful. And we even see it with some of our clients. We have a major credit card company that we did work with that they have some high end clients that call in, and one of the things that and it's a very small percentage, it's the Black Card members, and they wanted to create these profiles so that as an understanding of where their spending was. And you think the credit cards are collecting so much personal information as far as, where were you, a couple weeks ago because you were on vacation, you were
Right.
using your card. And so, just thinking about a way to even take that type of information. And then when they called into their representative, they could say, how was your trip? How were your kids? First day of school, how was your holiday? I think you were in Aspen. And again, it's just that being able to understand who you're talking to and just making them feel good
Right.
on the other end and not waste their time. It is small talk maybe as they're transitioning from screen to screen or trying to solve something for that customer. But during that process, they're feeling good and they're feeling taken care
So, where do you see the biggest disconnects happening when it comes to personalization?
So I'll speak more to the digital side. The most obvious is when visitors first interact with the brand. And so, let's look at the traditional example of coming from, Facebook or Google or wherever you're exposed to these ads and first clicking on them. There's typically a very targeted and personalized experience to that, right? You see an ad on Facebook or Instagram, and I don't know about you guys, but when I see those ads, like they speak to me, right? I'm constantly clicking on them because they're things I'm interested in, or they're related to other brands that I already like, and that's great. The problem from there is then I land on the website, and the website is generic, right? They're attempting to capture as many different personas as they can, but in doing that, they're not actually speaking one to one with anyone. And depending on how drastic that shift is, right, maybe it's coming in for a certain product line and seeing a different type of product, or if it's a lifestyle brand, right, that could be really daunting coming, like seeing one vision of that lifestyle and then landing on the website and seeing something completely different, especially if it's gender oriented. And that first disconnect can lead to so many other symptoms that brands experience on their website. It could be complete bounces, it could be shopping cart abandonment, and in one way or another, the core problem there is not really illustrating the proper value to your different types of customers. So I'd say that's really the biggest problem that you experience digitally, and the reason it's such a big problem is because that's the first step, right? That's their first exposure to your brand, and if it's not consistent, you're going to really big risk of losing.
and I think it's when people feel like they're having to start over. I've clicked through many of those
Yep.
Facebook ads, and you get there and you're like, wait a minute, I thought that I already, they showed me a picture, or they talked about something that clearly I was interested in, and now I don't even necessarily recognize the site that I'm going into.
Mhm.
It's showing me something different, it's talking about something different. And we experience that in our business as well. Being a project-based type organization, we may have somebody that enters the business for research, for example, and we're doing research and we're getting to know them. And if we're not careful during those transitions, from research to design, if we don't make sure that the information that we've collected and their voice and tone and who they are and what's important to them and where do they want to be in 5 years, we've collected that, we know that information. And if we in that transition from research to design and then design from development don't allow and make sure that it's being packaged up and delivered to the next team the right way, and in the case of digital, into the next place they land, because nobody wants to start over with that process. I've already told you who I am, I've told you what I want, you heard me because you gave me this great ad that
Right.
that attracted me, you heard what I was saying. Now why are you just throwing me back out there into this world where I'm starting over? And so it's critical in the digital space, but it's equally as critical in any type of organization where there's a transition or a handoff within the process. So I think it's really interesting to think of it even from that first click,
Right.
and how all of that translates even then, in a case like ours, to that final product.
Yeah, that first click is so key too, and it still amazes me how many ads you'll go in wanting that thing, and it's no longer on the site, or you can't find it anywhere on the site.
Mhm.
What came
Right.
in for that thing?
Mhm.
Right.
That's really
Yeah.
interesting. So I know you kind of covered this a little bit, but um, what can we borrow from the retail world or merchandising and begin to integrate that into the digital experience?
So I think first and foremost, it's just kind of an identification of who your core audiences are, and just having an understanding behind. All right, maybe these are my three different audiences. This is my most prominent audience, and these are other audiences that I want to get involved in. But I don't want to exclude my loyal followers by shifting my experience. And so using like apparel as an example, right? So if you have a female apparel brand, but you're also starting to introduce a lot of men's lines, which a lot of online and brick and mortar, retail brands are starting to do. You don't want to just completely switch everything over to men because you're going to exclude your loyal female audience and existing customers. And so I think um, what a lot can be borrowed from that idea of just traditional merchandising. Okay, if I need to change my store layout to start to accommodate this other audience that might be walking in, how can I do it subtly enough to where I'm not throwing off my existing customer base, but I'm doing it well enough to actually attract that new, type of customer that's walking in my store? You can pretty much take that same approach on your website because, again, you don't want to make these vastly different experiences that are going to be jarring to different types of customers, especially your existing ones. But you want to make it personalized enough to where it's making it work for everyone.
And so how can you begin to make that a cohesive experience? I mean, it sounds like there's a lot that you have to do behind the scenes and organizationally. How can people start to integrate that? Can you speak to?
Yeah, I mean, as far as outside of that digital world, or even just starting, it's having a place to store that information. Collecting it and being able to use that information in the next step of the process. So it's something I would recommend everyone is just making sure that when conversations are taking place, or when you've got some type of landing page or any type of when you're collecting it, make sure that you're not just collecting it only for that next step, but that you're collecting it to build on it and to really start to create that profile on that customer and use that during every step of the process. So it's really just having the right systems in place, which is obviously what your company does, and making sure that you not only receive it but that you use it.
And I think also just making sure that all different parts of your organization are all using the same
Yes.
system. Because I've seen so many times where digital marketers are, living in this software, and then the phone salespeople are living in this software, and the success people are, and they're collecting it and it's going somewhere, but it's not all going to the same place. So different organizations might have different pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, when you just think about the experience in general, and we see it with clients that we work with, where they've asked us to come in and do some process diagnosis around their customer experience, and typically one of the places that we start is on the systems that they're using. And to Kirk's point, you have somebody, you're collecting information, and then sales may see it and start working off it, and may start going into like some email campaigns, and then when they're ready and they're hot, they may move into a system like HubSpot, where it becomes more of a sales tool, or Salesforce. That information is being collected, and then it moves into more of a profile management type thing, where they are a customer, or it's somebody that you're engaging with. And one of the things we hear all the time is our systems don't communicate with each other. We have there may be a change to that customer profile. Talk about not feeling like you're a valued customer when something, a last name changes, something in your business, a law firm, a partner's added, a partner goes, and that information is given to your organization for an update. And when your systems don't talk, somebody in there doesn't know. And that right there, that creates that friction. Like, how am I having this conversation with one person in an organization and somebody else doesn't know? So definitely having, if you're not going to have one system, make sure that the people in the organization know where to go to find certain pieces of information. But I would obviously recommend that it all feed into one place.
it's a great point.
And can you speak a little bit to the testing and getting to know the audience? Because before they even enter the acquisition funnel or the personalization can begin, it's like you have to know what types of ads to place, where to place them. How do you begin to even know where to start that process?
So how we would start that process is, just understanding, identifying who the customer is. We do a lot of persona work where we start to dive into who the business thinks that their customers are. And although they often know, there's sometimes things they don't know about their customers. So my team here at Tallwave, we would do a user validation. So we validate against, validate the personas, often with surveys or interviews, pushing out and saying, are these the things that you're interested in? If you're interested in this, does that mean that you're interested in, in something else? And I would imagine it's very similar type of work that you guys do for that initial part on the digital marketing. But understanding your customer into their real wants, their needs, their current pain points, and being able to solve for those is a critical piece in being able to create the best customer experience for them.
Mhm. Yeah. Are there any examples of brands that are just really getting the personalization thing right?
So I'd say in kind of the traditional like brick and mortar sense, there's a lot of stores we're actually chatting ahead of time, right, about like the idea of Nordstrom and personal shoppers, and even it doesn't need to be a huge fancy brand, but you start to go into retail stores and the same people are working there, and they know what pants you bought last time, so they ask you how it was. And I think it's really easy to mimic that sort of personalization across brands in a personal sense, right? Because that's just how people naturally are. And people are used to that when they walk into a store, especially if they're seeing the same people over and over again. And so when you take that into the digital world, it becomes a little more difficult. And we're starting to see more brands do better jobs at personalization, I think, in certain aspects, right? So you look at like Netflix, right, which is, in my opinion, they're more recommendation, but there's also a level of personalization around there. Spotify, recently has this, personalized playlist where, like for me, it was Blast from the Past, and it was, all these songs from when I was in high school, and it was perfect. I listened to the entire thing straight through, right? And so I think we're kind of on that verge where brands are starting to realize that it's a lot more important, and they're starting to roll it out to more pieces of their customer journey, whether it's digital or whether it's in person, offline. Um, and I think we're going to start to see a lot more better examples of customers building these like fully contextual experiences online and offline.
Yeah, I mean, even when you just think about, like the Internet of Things, like how everything's talking to something
Right.
else, and really creating that, um, that connection so that people understand and really get to know their user. And when I think about, I don't use a Discover card, but I love their commercials
Right.
where they have, the customer is calling in and the person on the other side is answering and it's them. So I don't know what the real experience is, but I think that what they're portraying is just something that's so important because it's really showing like that connection and that that relationship on the other
Mhm.
side and the empathy and the understanding and those that's so important for that experience. And like I was saying, one of our clients, they are a major organization, and these detailed profiles that they're now building for their for their elite clients is mind blowing. But it will be something, that's where they're starting, and it will be something that they use for all of their customers. But just being able to not only have the data in front of them that's here's your card balance, here's your your last payment was 27 days ago or your 30 days past due, whatever it is, but having that knowledge of the customer right in front of them and at the hands of anybody that might pick up the phone. I think it's just a great example of companies that see the importance and are taking steps to create that relationship with their customers.
Mhm. Is there what kind of technology can people start to put in place, or the tech stack to begin to start personalization?
So I think to Terry's point, right, one of the earlier steps is figuring out where you're going to store it all, right?
Mhm.
So having some level of CRM is a great start because that helps you manage digital knowledge and offline knowledge, right? So you can start to build that profile about the visitors. From there, on the digital side, there's a number of different things you can use. Obviously, our platform Hyber is one of them that you can use to help manage the experiences that different types of visitors see, not only linked to how they got there and what they're doing on your site, but then also being able to collect that information and put it into your CRM so that you can carry that offline with you, either when you engage with them personally or when you're re-engaging with them through email um, or retargeting or whatever else it is. And then I think before that, it's really understanding, okay, how do you get your customers to begin with, right? Because yes, personalization when someone's exposed to your brand is really important, but if they're not becoming exposed to your brand to begin with, right, that's a bigger problem that you could probably talk to a little bit better in terms of what you guys are doing here at Tallwave. But making sure that you have an appropriate marketing process, whether it's digital or traditional, to capture that audience to begin with, to even then first expose them to your website or sales rep.
Absolutely. So, and I don't spend much time on that piece of the business
Mhm.
as far as the lead capture. But as you were talking, I was thinking, I think that a lot of organizations also fear because they've slowly put different systems in place and they've made investments into that. And so
Right.
when you hear to really have a great customer experience, you should, all of that stuff has to be combined. You've got to have one place for it, and it doesn't have to be that complicated. There's ways to, if you wanted to keep those different platforms, there's ways to create an interface that is integrated with all of them, where you're capturing key pieces. There's different reporting that can be done, and even if right away. When you talk about the technology, if the technology can't be there, there's quick fixes on ways that information can be collected. I mean, this is not what we would recommend, but I mean, even if it's just starting with profiles that you keep in Drive or some type of document share where everybody has access to a quick brief of important data around a customer, and that could be, I mean, that's very manual, but if at this point an organization doesn't feel like they have the resources or whatnot to be able to really invest in the technology, my recommendation would be a starting point is the service that these guys sell, because um, you don't get to have the conversation. So allow the technology to capture that information for you, and get your team on the right path, and then be able to do what you have to do to get by until you're able to invest in the right software, the right platform for your organization.
I'm glad you brought that up. We got a question in the chat about the cost, and is this costly to start to implement? Because I think that's the kind of a misperception or the actuality of it. But are there, I mean, beyond what you mentioned, are there ways to maybe even just start at it, like bare bones, or things that people can start to do to implement personalization?
Yeah, so I think there's different levels of it. I think the most obvious place to start is on that acquisition side, right? So if you do have some budgetary constraints in terms of what software you can use or what processes you can put in or software to support those processes, at least try to become a little bit more personal in your acquisition efforts. So maybe you're an organization that sends out emails, right? Well, instead of sending out the same email to everyone, maybe segment out your audience and send 3 or 5 different types of emails that speaks a little bit more specifically to them. And it doesn't have to be complicated, right? Maybe it's just a merge tag in the email template that fills in their vertical, right? So maybe it's like apparel versus gifts versus sporting goods, right? And just by switching out little things like that, and the same message starts to make it more personal. And then as you move to online paid media like Facebook, again, don't just throw up one ad and hope that it's going to work for everyone. As you're going through it, make sure that you're doing a better job of identifying who your appropriate audience is. Maybe you could start to now have different ads based off of gender or age or interests and things like that. And it might seem a little overwhelming at first, but if you just kind of stick your foot in the water and you slowly work out and walk out, and eventually like you'll start to understand more who your audience is and which ones are effectively coming through and interacting with your brand. And I think it'll just start to make a lot more sense to people, right?
Yeah, and I think if you're capturing that information on that more personalized level and really starting to understand who your audience is, it may seem like you're making an investment up front to learn that, but the money that you're saving on the other side, where you're no longer targeting the wrong people, you're no longer pushing ads out, you're not spending time with different types of campaigns to an audience that maybe isn't listening. So getting to know that audience first, and having something that's tracking and giving you the data to be successful is definitely an investment worth making.
That's a really great point. I think even before all this, or at the same time of it, one really important thing to consider is how are you going to track this? Because marketing is a game where unfortunately a lot of brands just kind of throw stuff against the wall and sees what sticks, and it's not efficient, right? And if you do have budget concerns, you need to be as efficient as possible with every dollar you spend. And the best way to do that is to have a consistently reliable method of tracking. And whether it's using the built-in tools in Facebook or Google, or just running Google Analytics for free on your website and being able to see, okay, which visitors are converting and where are they coming from, what ads are they clicking on, what products are they buying, and regularly going back and looking at that. And even the most basic insights will help you be more efficient with your marketing efforts. You could very clearly see, okay, we're spending money on, say, these two ads, and this one's converting way better than the second one is. So let's just turn the second one off because it's not working, right? And so now you can pour more money into the one that's being more efficient. And so you're spending your money smarter.
And it's, just to touch on that again, you had asked earlier about testing and like validating those personas and really starting to get to know that right there, tracking data and understanding who's paying attention, who's clicking is the start of really starting to validate those personas, because you may start to push campaigns out thinking, you've got 3 audiences based on personas that the marketing team created, 3 years ago. And as you're pushing that stuff out, you're like, wow, nobody here's listening. And that right there just validated, or in this case, debunked a persona that you thought existed within your organization. Mm-hmm. So you're taking that effort, that time, that money, and being able to say, let's put it where people are listening and where we're making an impact. So if you're investing in knowledge, really is what you're doing.
It doesn't have to be just on the digital front. I mean, having some sort of tracking mechanism, even for offline sales or client meetings and proposals and things like that. Being able to go back and say, okay, look, we've had this many meetings with these many different types of customers, and this is what our sales cycle is like for these different types of customers, and our close rate for each. It might help you realize, like, hey, we've been spending our time, on phone calls and in meetings with the wrong types of customers.
Absolutely. I mean, we see that, just depending on really getting an understanding of, where they are in their, if it's somebody that's coming with a concept, like where are they? Are they, have they been funded? Or is this, just an idea that they have and they're trying to, talk to somebody about it? Also, different verticals. We may start to see like, boy, we have a lot of people that come to us, in this particular vertical, and we never, they never become one of our partners, never become one of our clients. So maybe saying, it's just not our thing.
Right.
We're just not good there.
Right.
And it's okay. And it's okay to understand that, rather than to continue to spin your wheels in a place where you're not seeing success.
Yeah. Well, thank you both. This is such an important topic to cover, and it's like, there's these major brands that are setting these standards now that we've become accustomed to, and so all brands across the board really have to step up their game. So
absolutely,
if you're not, you're falling behind. So
it's critical. So where can folks connect with either one of you or learn more about your businesses?
So our website is hyverlabs.com. So hyverlabs.com. Any of you guys can feel free to email me directly, kirk@hyverlabs.com. But most, info and contact info can be seen there.
And our website is tallwave.com. And my email is terry.o'shaughnessy@tallwave.com. So the spelling of my name should be somewhere in front of you. And then I can also be found on LinkedIn.
Perfect. Thanks, guys.
Yep. Thank you guys.